Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this one, we're going to be covering a higher level mage guide. I know buffs aren't working as intended, and hopefully that'll be fixed soon, but in the meantime, you can still crush it as a mage. This is on New Game Plus 7, Journey 11 currently, and we're going to go over what to do to handle some of the tougher bosses without doing buffs. So lucky for us, mages are incredibly powerful and they don't need a lot of buffs. Now you will see me occasionally use Golden Vow, but I'm just using it for the defense boost because at the time that I'm voicing over this video or talking about this, Golden Vow isn't boosting spells, nor is Howl, so we're going to avoid those for the most part, using Golden Vow mainly for a little bit of a defense boost. However, we will be using Terra Magika because it does suit us as a mage, and go over the basics of how to handle some of the tougher bosses, especially on higher New Game Plus cycles, and be able to destroy them with ease as a mage. I have a level 200 character here, and my basic spell that I'm going to be using is the Dual Staves Night Comet, because even without buffs, it still receives a 60% boost between both staves. It does massive damage, has incredible range, and for the most part, it can't really be avoided by enemies that normally notice things and can sidestep. In the case of Night Comet, they'll get hit by it. We did a little bit of Comet Azur, we're going to mix that in too, and a couple other spells, but Night Comet is very much the bread and butter for your boss fights. It is very powerful, has a lot of range, and can be boosted by the Godfrey Icon when charged too. So it's just a really beneficial spell. It's a spell that can definitely carry you through most of the bosses in the game. However, I do change up a couple different spells as I show off here, but without buffs, we're still going to be able to take down some of the toughest bosses in the game as we go from here all the way to the end. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers in this video just to show you how to handle each individual one and how to destroy them as a mage with ease without having to go through a buffing system that isn't working currently on patch 1.09. Now for the Godskin Duo, I have a different setup. I like putting these guys to sleep. You've seen that in a lot of my videos just to test damage and whatnot. But as a mage, as I'm just trying to get past these guys, putting them to sleep near each other and then using Comet Azur can do massive damage to them. By the way, when we're using Comet Azur, since I have a lot of intelligence, only a little bit of faith on this character, we're using Lusat's staff, which has great intelligence scaling, and then we're using the Jellyfish Shield for the 20% boost. If we're using Night Comet, we're going to use the 2 Staves of Loss and get the 60% boost there in damage, which obviously beats out any other staff's scaling as far as damage goes. That 60% is huge for Night Comet. So at the end here, he didn't have a lot of HP, so I didn't switch back to the Night Comet setup. I do have all of them equipped and ready to go, so I can change stuff up on the fly. But for here, he didn't have a lot of HP left. And once again, with Comet Azur and Sleeping Pots, we were able to turn the Godskin Duo fight, which is normally difficult, into something trivial and very easy to do. Okay, so not entirely a main boss here, but I know this Draconic Tree Sentinel may be hitting you in the back when you go in to fight Beast Clergyman, and you may find it kind of obnoxious how often he's going to try to hit you or send a fireball as you try to enter the fog gate. So if you're a mage, set up Terra Magika, and then you're going to use Comet Azur, and as he attempts to do a phase transition between the middle and at the beginning, he has that kind of horse jump thing, whatever that move is, you're able to just completely wipe him out before he's able to do any damaging or ranged attacks to you. It's very easy to take him down with Comet Azur. Now we got him out of the way. As far as Beast Clergyman, he actually did kill me once. He's a little bit annoying to fight sometimes because he has that ability to close the distance on you and to also do random backflips and such that can turn into ranged attacks. His moveset for me is one of the boss movesets that I like the least. It's not something that I really enjoy. As far as Beast Clergyman, a lot of the times I actually find him more difficult than Malekith because at least Malekith's a little bit more predictable, and Beast Clergyman's attacks, generally speaking, he has a lot of stuff that looks like it won't hit you and then it will, and then he's got a lot of stuff where he can just drop back and do ranged attacks. He's just a little bit difficult to fight in my opinion, but as you can see there, we went with Night Comet. We're going to do the same treatment for Malekith here and take him down fairly decently quickly. Night Comet is great against these guys, generally speaking. If you're able to charge it, obviously you'll get more damage. If you can't charge it, then you can spam it for relatively good damage as well. And then you can use the dual staff setup to get a lot of damage out of it, even without the crazy amount of buffs. If you're able to put Terra Magika down, obviously do that. But against Malekith, it could be a little bit difficult. As far as Beast Clergyman might be a little bit easier, but don't forget he can close the distance on you really fast too. One thing I recommend for all players is to go towards Malekith's hind legs behind him, because when he does that flip and then does Destined Death, you can actually roll and avoid it in its entirely behind him. You're actually better off being close to him and avoiding his multiple ranged attacks, which are much more damaging and frustrating to deal with than his close range attacks. Now on to Gideon. So for Gideon, there's not much to talk about here. I'm just going to let you watch this on screen, and I'm going to state real quick that if you guys aren't in the Discord, you definitely need to join it. Again, I've mentioned this in my videos, but there's over 400 people in there. It's been a ton of fun. Everybody's been talking. It's been very active, and there's a lot of trading and stuff in there too. It's a very good Discord. And if you're not subbed, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button too. You're not going to want to miss out on all this Elden Ring content. And now on to Horoah Lou, because Godfrey is a little bit easy, and this video was kind of long to begin with. Generally speaking, just use Night Comet on him, and I'll show the harder part of the fight here. The single biggest piece of advice that I can possibly give you when it comes to Horoah Lou is this: don't get too greedy. You don't want to get greedy with Horoah Lou. Take your time. You're able to beat him very easily if you do take your time, because as long as you avoid his grapple attacks, a lot of the other stuff, you can keep your distance away from him. You're able to get in here where we use Night Comet, take his HP down as fast as we possibly can, but at a reasonable rate where we're not getting too greedy so that we don't get grappled by him. Because if you're casting a spell at the time he goes to grapple you, you're going to have a hard time rolling out, and he may be able to one-hit you, especially since I'm on New Game Plus 7 and the damage is kind of insane at this point, so it's not something you want to do as far as being grappled. Forgot to mention, by the way, with Godfrey, after the initial fight, if you die once and go in a second time, you can use Comet Azur on the first phase to speed that up too. Now on to Radagon. Normally, because he can deflect spells, Radagon is actually a little bit difficult as far as mages go, but lucky for us, we're able to use Night Comet here, set up Terra Magika when you go in the room initially, and then all of your attacks are going to be basically unavoidable because he can't see Night Comet. None of the enemy AIs, NPC invaders and such, Malenia as well, can see Night Comet. They all get hit by it, so it's a fantastic choice to take down Radagon. As long as you stick to that, dodge his attacks, it's not going to be too difficult for you. Night Comet is really a great answer for Radagon, simply for the fact that every time you're casting it, you're going to do damage because he's not going to avoid it. Now on to Elden Beast, who can definitely be a challenge. Now, Pest Threads is the obvious one to go here. If you use Pest Threads, you can get through this fight fairly quickly, but I wanted to show you a different option if you don't have Pest Threads or you wanted to try something a little bit more ranged. The other one that's really good that I've noticed, and I figured kind of out in this fight as I was going along here, is Shard Spiral, which seems to do a lot of damage to larger targets. What's cool and unique about Shard Spiral that makes it kind of one of the funnest spells, at least in my opinion, is the fact that it goes through targets. It will literally damage them as it entirely goes through them, and if you hit it at the right time, you can do between 3,000 and 5,000 damage to Elden Beast, which is a lot for something that you're essentially just casting from a medium range distance. It is definitely a good option to take down larger targets. Now, as Elden Beast's health goes down, he will get to the point where he starts to spam attacks time and time again. I actually died at this fight twice, not to Radagon, but to Elden Beast, simply for the fact that sometimes it is very much a stamina check, and he was just spamming a lot. He was doing one attack after another. There wasn't a lot of windows, and I did get greedy. But after that, I settled down. I decided to use Shard Spiral to change it up a little bit, and I was able to get enough damage out of it while keeping the fight at a reasonable rate as far as how long it is, because this is a fight that can go on for several minutes, but generally speaking, it's obviously much better if you can do it in 2 or 3 minutes, simply for the fact that on New Game Plus 7, he does have 31,000 HP, he does have 40% magic resistance, and those spam attacks, as you can see on screen here, can be very, very, very annoying to deal with. Definitely not my favorite fight as far as Elden Beast goes. I like his design and all that, but as far as the spam attack goes, it's a little bit much to deal with. You will be able to handle it well, though, if you pace yourself, dodge, don't get greedy, and wait for the right openings, because there are several of them, like this here, where he gives you a little bit of time afterwards to hit him hard. Also, don't do panic rolling and stuff like that when you're fighting Elden Beast. Everything is very much timed as far as his attacks goes, to where you have time in between rolls. You don't need to constantly roll. Elden Stars is the only one that's going to consistently kind of be on you. Everything else that he does is relatively slow. There is a couple of annoying ones like Wave of Gold, where if you're in the vicinity of it, it seems a little bit tricky to dodge. But as far as the majority of the fight goes, aside from Elden Stars, a lot of his stuff is stuff that you're able to avoid simply by watching his sword, waiting for his attacks, and rolling through it timely. And again, you don't have to consistently roll. There is windows where you can punish him afterwards, as you saw there with several of his attacks. Again, as a mage, you could always go with Pest Threads, and if you're directly near him or very close to him, it is the best way to get damage out of him. But if you want to go with a little bit more range, Shard Spiral isn't a bad option, again, because it goes through them and does consistent damage. If you are able to put Terra Magika down, obviously you'll get 35% more. Terra Magika is working fine right now. As far as the rest of the Faith buffs, though, unfortunately they aren't. Hopefully, eventually they will be soon. And when they do, mages will be even more powerful. But as this video shows, mages are still quite powerful. You don't need a ton of buffs. You can go through on New Game Plus 7 even and absolutely destroy the majority of bosses with relative ease. People always ask me what exact journey I'm on. The exact journey that I'm on right now is 11. We would be going into 12. I chose not to go into 12 yet just to finish up a couple of things, but that's the journey I'm on. We're at max scaling, and I'm going to show real quick what I do for mobs before we go over stats, build, equipment, everything you need to know. For people wondering what I do on my mage character, I have 7 characters by the way, what I do with this one in terms of mobs, how to handle mobs. A Duelist Moonblade is basically the way to go for me. It has a really wide sweep, it obviously does the frost damage, it does massive damage in general, and it scales well with Lusat's staff in terms of the scaling, and you're just going to get, again, a lot of damage out of it, and you can just completely wipe out mobs using a Duelist Moonblade. And again, here you're going to see it. It's just absolute destruction as far as that goes. It's definitely a good bread and butter weapon. Now let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have 2 Staves of Loss for the Night Comet boost, Lusat's Staff, any seal, the Jellyfish Shield. We have Azur's Glintstone Crown on. We have the Godfrey Icon, Graven Mask Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Magic Scorpion Charm. And then we have the Magic tier, and then occasionally the Infinite FP tier if we're doing Comet Azur. Now for stats, this is on my level 200 mage character. For right now, you don't really need to invest a lot in faith until those buffs are working again, or whether or not they will. Hopefully it wasn't intended and it will be fixed. For the time being though, if you're really high level, I recommend at least 80 intelligence and then going for 50 or 60 vigor, especially since for me, I don't really rock very good armor for my mage. I like to keep either a light or medium roll depending on what I'm doing. But as far as stats goes here, I like how they are. Let's get into, well, not really buffs because we're not doing much as far as that goes, but just an explanation on how I'm using the build that I'm running. And basically the first things first here is I like Golden Vow for the extra defense, even if it's not giving us an attack boost currently. And then Terra Magika is a great option. You're going to use that with the Night Comet dual staves. And then if you want to switch to any other spells, the Jellyfish Shield and Lusat's Staff do a lot of damage. It's a great option. You can carry this all together with around medium weight so you get the medium roll and you're all good as far as the mage stuff goes. I hope this video helps you guys. I'm going to try to timestamp all the bosses if you're having any trouble with them as far as the later New Game Plus cycles as you're waiting for buffs to come back. And the question really is, can a mage still take over Elden Ring with ease? Absolutely. You really don't need the buffs a ton right this second. It just makes you even more powerful. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. If you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. Thanks for watching. As always, I will catch you guys there.